All right. So, welcome to Making Waves to Move to Joy, a series of mini webinars where Johanna and Marie get real about the ebb and flow of finding lasting joy and happiness as women and as leaders. And we're here to help you get the most value from this session. And if you joined because you want to understand why you lost your joy, see a clear path for regaining your spark, and learn how to sustain it in your work, you're in the right place. So, over this 6-part webinar, you'll gain insights into what's blocking your joyful career path. At the end of each session, we'll get practical tips to apply the lessons we talk about and an invitation to connect with us to explore your personalized path to joy, whether you're a corporate leader, an entrepreneur, or actually getting ready to retire. And for those attending live, you will receive a free mini guide after the session to help you apply these insights to your own life. And while we have some returning attendees, I know we have quite a few people in the audience today who don't know us. So, Johanna, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, wonderful. And thank you, Marie. So I'm Johanna Danaher, and I like to call myself the energy optimizer. I am a coach that works with people in transformation, right? And I focus on helping individuals strengthen confidence, find clarity, and protect their well-being as they make what's next come to life for themselves. And so if you're pushing through or second guessing yourself, or you're feeling drained by a life that no longer fits, we don't push harder. We actually reset your foundation. Through my Waves transformation journey, we align our values, strengths, and energy so you can move forward with steadiness and with self-trust. And what about you, Marie?
Yeah, so I'm Marie Clark, and I am a joy optimizer, possibility partner, and career coach for those really big shifts that you go to make in your life and to really help you move from burnout to bountiful. So, my specialty is working with those who've climbed the ladder of success, whether that is corporate America or building a business. And all of a sudden, you realize that view is not as nice as you thought it would be. And so, you want to do something that has a deeper meaning or creates a bigger impact, but you don't know how to make that transition with all of the adult responsibilities weighing you down. And then also throwing away all those years of training and hard work. And so we use my proprietary map process to find some creative solutions, unique strategies, practical tactics, and that emotional support so that you can have your dream life.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Marie. And so much of what we're here to talk about today is really what both of us do. It's about, cultivating confidence. And I'm really curious, Marie, when you think about confidence, what does that mean to you, and how does that show up with the clients that you work with?
Yeah, confidence is one of those interesting things, right? It's so nebulous, but yet we know it when we see it. And so it's really hard to distill that, right, down into something that's tangible that we can actually work with. But that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, and one of the little secrets we're going to share with our listeners. So, kind of want to share a story, right? Because I learn best through stories. And I had a client, Joyce, and she was not confident. She'd been out of work for an extended period. She was really struggling financially. In her past, she had appeared confident and been confident. She owned a business. But now she decided to join or to transition into a career working for somebody else and really didn't feel like she could get a job in her field. And we talk about that intangible for confidence. When you first met Joyce, you could see she lacked confidence in herself and in her skills. Her eyes were flat, her mouth smiled, but she didn't seem happy, and her shoulders were a bit slumped. She had that posture that kind of says, I don't really trust myself. And she said all the right words in the interview, but never got a call back. And so in our coaching sessions, we really dug into what was holding her back. We talked about the past failures that were showing up in her body language and sabotaging her during interviews. And that was her inner critic coming up and talking to her and really keeping her in low confidence mode. And so we then switched it and actually looked at some of her successes. So not those interview story successes, right, that you trot out and, all the fancy things you did and the LinkedIn pretty version. But we talked about the real value she brings as an individual. So her innate talents, her training, and the way she thinks that allows her to solve problems that others couldn't. And normally our inner critic will push those unique abilities down. But if we bring out our inner coach, we begin to find our confidence. And actually, after just 2 coaching sessions, you could see the difference just in the way she presented to the world. Her eyes were sparkling, her smile was genuine, her shoulders were erect. She projected confidence because she felt more confident, and she got a job just a few weeks later. But it's interesting because we talk about the tangible part of confidence and the intangible piece. The one thing that built her confidence the most was actually doing her dishes each night before she went to bed. So she had self selected that task as something that was really getting into her inner critic. And literally, by taking 5 minutes each night to wash her dishes, she built trust and confidence in herself.
And I love, that example, right, on how something seemingly so small really was the tipping point that enabled this client to move forward. And I'm curious if you could, Marie, just talk a little bit more about how that really worked. How did doing the dishes each day turn into enough confidence to change a career path?
Yeah, it seems crazy, right? But really, confidence is a mindset. It is determined by your actions and then your reflection on those actions. And so we think that confidence comes first and then action, but really it's the opposite. Action builds confidence. And it's that cycle that we can either use to increase our success and happiness or decrease it. And this is really where the confidence equation, that be plus do, that we're going to talk about a little bit later, comes into play. We think confidence comes from those high stakes situations, right? You think about the big client presentation, the interview for the promotion, but it's those small, everyday things and how you talk to yourself about them that build your confidence. And so another great example actually came from this same client. A few weeks later, right before she got the job, she came in, she says, I did not sleep last night. Well, why didn't you sleep? What's weighing on you? And she was beating herself up because she'd planned to order the salad when she went to lunch with her friends, but ended up ordering the burger and fries, right? All of us have done that. But that failure I had planned to order the salad, but ordered the burger and fries. Her inner critic was really playing in her head and feeding that loop that she was a failure. And it was eating at her trust in herself. And then, therefore, it was eating at her confidence and really undermining her just in those little small ways that then impacted her in the big ways when she went to interview. And so, by changing how she thought about that, by changing from an inner coach or inner critic to inner coach, we really helped her build her confidence. And then she was able to really apply that to what she was doing.
Yeah, and I love that, right? When we beat ourselves up over the small things, it's no wonder that we feel that we can't do the big things. Absolutely. So it's a great example.
Yeah. And it's that mindset of the small actions, the things that you do. Trust is built in yourself in the small actions first. And that's really the do part of our confidence equation of do plus be. Because once you've built that trust in yourself in small ways, whether it's ordering the salad like you said you would, washing the dishes every night, blocking that time for email and holding that time without letting people intrude on it, prepping for the meeting the day before instead of when you're walking in, all those little things. The trick is literally little. Start
Mhm.
small. It's better to keep one small promise for yourself than keep it the next day and the next day. Then maybe add another small thing. And in that process, in that practice, that's really where you build this intangible confidence into a tangible thing that you can see. And the people that kind of ooze that confidence, they walk into the room and you know they own the room, they've actually practiced that process of building trust in themselves for the longest time and kept those promises. So, with that story, Johanna, I really want to kind of pull our audience back in and ask them, so what is one small thing that you tend to beat yourself up over, whether it's the burger and fries or the dishes or something else, that probably deserves some grace instead? So while our attendees are answering that in the chat, Johanna, I'd really like to hear, what do you see when the confidence in your clients?
Yeah, so the thing that you talked about, Marie, the inner critic, is a pattern that I see most clearly with my clients, and especially high achievers. So they come to me having accomplished amazing things. They've led global teams, navigated very complex careers, raised families, achieved promotions, and they all still say, I thought I'd feel more confident by now. And the gap isn't, to your point, in what they've done. It is that conversation that's happening inside their heads. So, something I see often, right? A woman stepping into a new role. Maybe it's a VP position. Maybe it's a launch of a business or a side hustle that she's dreamed about. Maybe it's even semi-retirement. And the inner critic shows up with a script, right? And it's a rehearsed script. Who are you to do this? What if people see that you're not qualified to do this? Remember that time that you failed when you tried something similar? Are you relevant? What if I make the wrong choice? We probably have all heard ourselves asking those questions multiple times, right? And it's really intense. Those questions actually have a different volume setting during transitions, whether it's a career pivot, the retirement planning, the promotion, even menopause, because those moments require us to actually be different before we can do different. And our
Mm,
inner critic really hates that uncertainty. And so that's where it really stems from. It's sort of back to that protection cycle, right? The inner critic comes up for a reason because it believes it needs to protect us from something. However, the inner critic actually is holding us back versus protecting, right? And so I think it's really important to almost have a mirror to hold up and recognize that the inner critic is showing up. And I have an example of a couple of different clients where this really played a big impact in their lives and in their careers. One had said, I've been a leader for 20 years, but now I'm questioning everything. It's like my confidence evaporated. And it hadn't evaporated. It was actually tied to her old identity. She needed to rebuild it for her next chapter. And that's where that confidence equation comes into play, right? It's about be, that's your inner state. How are you showing up? Who are you being? Your self talk, your beliefs, your energy level. And the do side, like you said before, is about action. What are you doing? The actions, the practice, the habits that you're forming over time. So most people actually focus only on the do side, right? I do more, I achieve more, I prove more. But if your being is being dominated by the inner critic, no amount of doing will build that lasting confidence. No matter how many times we put those habits into practice, if we're still telling ourselves we're a failure, right, or we're still questioning our value and we're not being at the same time that we're doing, the confidence isn't one that's going to come forward. So when the critic dominates that B side, again, it's really about holding you back. And what we have to do is cultivate the critic to coach. So the voice that says, you're learning, This is how growth feels. You've done the hard things before, right? Validating the experience, validating that it's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to not know. It's okay that you make a mistake or have a failure because you learn from it and you grow from it. And on the do side, just like you said before, when we have those small doable actions that we couldn't put into practice and learn from, that's where the confidence grows. It grows through repetition, through learning, and through doing, not through the pressure of trying to achieve more.
Yeah. So when you talk about that, right? The be and then the do, and it's a cycle. And
Mhm,
I really hear you talking about how, yes, we achieve, but then we also have to trust ourselves and use our inner coach instead of beating ourselves up as we are learning and growing.
mhm,
And so as we talk about it being a cycle, right? It's an equation. It's not, and it's more together, right? They're separate, but
mhm.
together. So when we think about that, do you have any examples of how that be and that do kind of work together?
Yeah, so one client comes to mind. I'll call her Elena. She was in her mid 50s and she was considering a pivot. She had been in corporate finance for almost half of her life, and she really wanted to move into, consulting, a fractional type of work, her own business. And her inner critic was absolutely relentless. And like you were saying before, you could physically see it, but you could hear it. She had this perception that she was too old, right, to make this pivot, that no one would hire her. She's missed her window. So her words when she came to me, she was very much talking to herself out loud as well as in her mind in this sort of deflating way, self-sabotaging on the front end before even trying. And so we started with the B work, right? I really wanted to dig in with her to understand what were the things that she was passionate about, right? Really understanding the core motivators for why she wanted to make this move into consulting. And we talked a lot about how she was really motivated for this, right? She wanted to be able to bring her knowledge of the financial industry to other women who were starting their own businesses. And she was feeling that she had a lot of value to bring to help women understand how to read a profit and loss statement, to understand how to actually manage their finances in a different way, how to have conversations with different people. Like you're not working just with an individual tax consultant, you're now working with a business tax consultant, and there are different considerations. She had all of this knowledge and she had all of this expertise, but she kept saying, "You're too old. They won't hire you. You don't have the right type of experience." So there was a lot of judgment happening. So I talked about what would an inner coach say? And she didn't really understand that question at first, right? So I had to reframe it to say, okay, this is what your inner critic is telling you. If you were talking to your peer, what would you say to your peer? And she's like, "Oh, I would tell my peer they had all the knowledge in the world, that they would be excellent at it. They've already managed large scale teams. They've been a consultant in their organization for years. They've been the go-to person. They've mentored hundreds of people." And I said, "So why aren't you saying that to yourself?" And she paused and she had to say, it was like this moment where it was like she had nothing really to say at that moment, right? She was like, I don't know why I'm not saying that to myself." And I said, so let's actually come up with a different statement. What do you want to say to yourself when that inner coach comes forward? And she said, and it was a really powerful reframe. She said, my age is an asset, not a liability. So she actually used the words that you would hear from a financial expert, right? Assets and liabilities. And she turned that back to herself and she said, I have 25 years of experience that people need. My age, my experience is an asset. I'm putting that in the asset column, not the liability column. That was powerful. And then we moved on to do. And we wanted to talk a little bit about how do we bring those small micro habits into her do side of the equation. And we focused on one action, just one simple action, and we tested and worked on those actions over time. It started out as like one action per week. We found that that was a little too much, so we slowed it down. We actually kept doing that same action week over week for 3 to 4 weeks until it became routine. And then we added another action in. So we had to repeat, 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 and repeat. So the first action was just reaching out to one person in her network that wasn't at her current company. Right? Reaching out, having conversations, sharing something. So it was just simple outreach. Then we moved into actually updating her LinkedIn profile to really talk about her assets. What did she bring to the community? How could she actually showcase all of her experience and her expertise in a different way? Each small action gave her evidence, and that evidence was what silenced that inner critic and really enabled her to make that pivot. It took 6 months, right, for her to actually land that first consulting contract. And it was because she learned to be her own coach and take that consistent small action over time.
Yeah, and that's an amazing story on a lot of levels. Obviously, her success, her ability to reframe, her ability to learn to be her own inner coach instead of inner critic, and truly to make that pivot using the be and do cycle to really create more confidence. And I think the other thing that I picked up between your stories and the stories of my clients is the magic of working with a coach as opposed to trying to do it on your own. There's a lot of things that happen there, right? You figured out you needed to start on the B side. My client needed to start on the do side. And then also that asking questions that we forget to ask ourselves, like, what would you tell a peer? And things like that are things that really happen when you work with a coach, whether it's in a one-on-one situation or a group situation. But that's the magic, I think, of a trained coach.
Yeah, I agree, Marie, so much. It's having that trusted partner that you can really, be vulnerable with, right? To be able to explore deeply these concepts. Confidence seems to be something that those confident people have, and it seems to be something that may sometimes feel out of reach. But when we have these conversations with that trusted thought partner, we're able to really cultivate and find simple ways to move forward and to build that confidence over time. So, Marie, I know our audience is actually listening and really interested in how can they take action to build confidence in their current situation. Any tips that you would leave the listeners with?
Yeah, we only have a couple minutes, but we are going to be sending the mini guide to those that attended live. So, with the mini guide, it will actually give you a way to score yourself and determine your own confidence quotient. Where is your B plus do score put you? And then it will talk about some small steps you can do to improve that confidence equation and give you some examples of how to turn your inner coach or inner critic into your inner coach, right? So just a couple quick things in our last couple of minutes there. And so, Johanna, since they are going to be getting the mini guide, and this will all go into detail with them as well, if they wanted to connect with us, what's the best way for our audience to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one way to connect with both of us is to visit our websites. So my website is anchor2aspire.com, and your website, Marie, is move to joycoaching.com, and we'll put those in the chats, and they're also in the mini guides. Again, it's really important to just engage with us. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We're both very active out on LinkedIn. We love conversations. We love to connect. We love to share stories and set up time, right? We're inviting you to set up a coffee chat connection with either of us. And you can do that by visiting our websites, again, anchor2aspire.com or move to joycoaching.com, where you can set up those coffee connections with us. And as we close out, Marie, why don't we tell our listeners what the next episode is going to be about?
Yes, so this is going to be a fantastic episode for episode 3. Continuing our theme of embrace fearlessness for season 2, we're going to talk about the fact that you can't make a mistake. And that's a pretty radical statement when you first hear that. And it will be March 30th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find the link to that on either one of our websites under upcoming events, or I did put the link in the chat under Eventbrite. And I can't wait to dig into You Can't Make a Mistake with our new confidence that we've learned from today.
Absolutely. So, thank you everyone for joining us on this journey back to joy, because our willingness to start while removing judgment on the outcome is actually what brings us confidence. It builds our confidence when we are doing and being the best of ourselves. So, again, thank you so much, everyone. Talk soon.
Bye, everybody. Oh, she left.